Whatever your beliefs, I ask that you please watch and listen with an open mind. Before we break things down, I think it's important to let you know where I stand. The specific thing I stand for is very straightforward: peace. Within that, I stand in solidarity with Black Lives Matter. And the reason Black Lives Matter is at the core of this is because they have never, as an entire people, experienced peace in America. Yes, Black individuals and Black families can and have found peace and success in America. That's the power of the human spirit. I'm not saying that's impossible. I don't think anyone's saying that because A, that's dangerous rhetoric, and B, what's being said is that America has always severely disadvantaged them. And that's putting it lightly. From slavery to sharecropping to overseers to officers to Jim Crow to ghettos to the CIA flooding their communities with crack to completely unjust prison sentences and prison slave labor. I mean, the list really goes on. And just because you cannot blatantly see it from a small town, suburbia, or specific news sources does not mean it doesn't exist. So let's talk about George Floyd. I'm going to start with what almost everyone agrees with, liberal and conservative. This was murder, that's pretty clear. All 4 officers should be prosecuted, sentenced, and frankly, made an example of. Now, here's where the differences start. This was an isolated incident versus systemic oppression. We should protest peacefully versus we should protest violently. Black people are responsible for all this destruction versus white people are responsible for all this destruction versus thugs versus the system. Now, let me explain something. When you believe an idea, your mind does everything it can to try to prove yourself right. Most of us live in a world where almost all of the information we get is from a select few sources. Even if you think you look at a variety of sources, remember, 6 companies own and produce 90% of the mainstream media you see. And if you continually consume a particular belief system, like all cops are bad or all black people are bad, your mind will attempt to find examples to prove yourself right. And the media bubble you're in will reinforce those ideas. So really, all of us, as humans, are creating a reality where we are constantly justifying our own beliefs, which is why it's incredibly important to vet and choose what you believe very carefully. Because if you're spoon-fed hateful, I won't even say hateful, if you're spoon-fed divisive belief systems, you will unintentionally internalize those beliefs and perpetuate them. Personally, I choose to believe that humanity as a whole will overcome this severe negativity that we clearly have been in for a while. Okay, back to George Floyd. I've seen a lot of Republican media use statistics of black-on-black crime and police killing white people to disqualify the anger, rage, and riots occurring. Most of these statistics are severely skewed for several reasons, like the fact that black-on-black crime is just crime in their own over-policed communities, or the fact that they completely ignore disproportionate prison sentences based on race, and black people being 2 to 3 times as likely to be killed by the police. But let's set that aside for a second. I have seen a lot of conservative people claim the media doesn't show the police killing white people or black people killing white people, which both also happen, so this systemic racism thing must be liberal BS. Here's the truth. The reason the media disproportionately only focuses on white people killing black people is psychological warfare. Understand, this is a very real and very ongoing threat. To see helpless people that look like you killed over and over and over again by people who do not look like you is extremely traumatic, especially with the generational and historical context behind it. It's one of the many tools that is used to keep someone afraid of authority and obedient. If you're not black, you don't really get it when someone says Black Lives Matter. And you never will get it, period. And most allies know this. You can intellectually understand something, but unless you experience it for yourself, you will never truly understand it. Okay, having and raising kids, for example. I can intellectually understand how hard that must be. But seeing how I've never had kids, there's no way for me to truly understand that experience. So why would I try to tell parents that it's not that bad by quoting statistics at them? You see what I mean? The other side of the coin is also true. If you've never been a cop, you don't know what that experience is like. I know there are cops that are also confused, scared, and human. I'd like to think most of them are just doing their jobs and actually want to help people. The problem is that it is clearly not all of them. And it has to be every single one, no exceptions. And if you've been paying attention at all, the entirety of the world is seeing the absolute brutality and literal terrorism of US police up close. En masse, the public is seeing their true colors come out when they have anonymity and the backing of the deadliest military in the world. Way too many of them are being extremely violent with peaceful protesters.
Go inside now! Get in the house!
Not looters, mind you, not rioters, but people, young and old, holding signs. People walking up trying to talk to them. There are literal war crimes occurring right outside our own homes, by our own government. People are fed up. If you think this is only about George Floyd, you don't see what's going on. I'll pause on the history lessons of systemic racism and oppression and just cut to some common sense. If people are this angry, there is a legitimate reason. I'm not saying we should riot, but you have to understand where this is coming from. And that's extremely tricky, particularly in this case, because there are so many different groups with different motivations. First is George Floyd's family and the Black Lives Matter movement, which have both officially called for peace and justice.
Peace on the left, justice on the right. Peace on the left, justice on the right.
Next, you have the Minneapolis citizens who were protesting peacefully, but were first attacked by police anyways. You then have members of that community who lashed out back against the police. After that, you have people taking advantage of all this to riot and loot. However, there are accounts of the looting starting when that Target refused to sell water and milk to the protesters. Now, you also have people being paid, both black and white, to instigate violence. You have racist civilians and racist police framing black people for rioting.
You wanna go? What's up? Somebody hold my blunt. Hey, somebody hold my blunt.
The motto of this entire situation is there are so many threads, I don't even know which one to follow. But let me give you a hint. They all lead back to one thing. But we'll get into that in a minute. Now, personally, I do not condone violence as an answer. I think there are universal laws that make violence far less effective in the long run. However, something not all of us realize is that America is violence. It's born of genocide, built with slavery, and consistently ruled by an elite class who thrive on warfare and oppressive hierarchies. So wanting to stand up to an oppressive and violent system is not crazy. All that being said, let's finally turn around and look at the upside. After Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated, cities across America rioted and damaged millions of dollars worth of property. On the 6th day, the Civil Rights Act was passed. So my question is, what is our Civil Rights Act? BLM has specifically called for the defunding of the police and redistributing that money back into black and economically impoverished neighborhoods. Which cities are actually taking the steps to do because of these protests. Like coronavirus, we are fighting an invisible enemy, which is a threat to all of us as a species. And that threat is white supremacy and violent leaders. If you don't like that word, I'll boil it down even simpler. It is a lack of compassion and empathy for other human beings. And I think that's what makes this so frustrating for everyone. There isn't a clearly defined enemy. Sure, most people will either point to Trump or to looters, but this is so much bigger than them. We need compassionate leaders and compassionate citizens. We need more compassionate laws, authority figures, role models. We need a more compassionate society in every single aspect. So how do you demand that? That intangible experience of peace and compassion? I'll tell you. There's an energy that exists when a group of passionate and like-minded people come together. I first felt this feeling at Standing Rock. You remember that, right? That's the reservation where thousands and thousands of people came together to peacefully try to stop the U.S. government from building a pipeline for the oil companies through Native American territory, but instead of being listened to, were tear gassed, shot with rubber bullets, hit with concussion grenades, blasted with water cannons in freezing temperatures, attacked by police dogs, and oh yeah, even put in dog cages. Despite all of that, there is still an energy there, passed down from the elders and amplified by the water protectors that I had never felt before. A monumental surge of unconditional love and the desire for peace. That feeling is extremely powerful. Do not let anyone take that from you. That is what will change this world. I am certain of it. Stand strong in your beliefs of justice and equality. Stand up to authoritative regimes, but we must do so peacefully and become the change we want to see in the world. Forget black versus blue. This is human versus human. This is not a conservative side versus a liberal side. This is compassion versus self-interest, plain and simple. And those lines are very blurry. Just because you stand next to someone who has similar beliefs doesn't mean they're truly on the side of compassion for all. And that's the only side we need to be on. We have to unify as humans. Not as Americans, not as minorities, not as the oppressed, but as humans. We all have human problems, similarities, wants, needs, and futures. Take a look around. Yes, America is on fire, but the entire world has been on fire for quite some time. This year, 2020, is the year we are really starting to come together as humans. People around the world are showing support for George Floyd, Black lives, and peaceful protesters. This is absolutely amazing. Like, seriously, incredible. The whole world is scared for their lives because we're in the middle of a freaking pandemic. They're dealing with their own major issues in their own countries. But yet millions of people around the world have come out risking their own lives to show support for Black lives specifically and humans being attacked by their own government more broadly. That's incredible and very powerful. We are the people. We are the change. We have the power, and we must not settle for anything less than justice and peace. To every human out there, I see you. I feel your pain. I feel your confusion. But most importantly, I feel your power. And I hope you do too. It is time to rise up in the name of humanity. I am currently drafting a peace deal and justice act. A draft or a link will be left in the description. Please comment your critiques, concerns, improvements, additions, whatever you want. We will have peace and we will have justice. My name is Jordan Churchwell, and I am pro-peace and pro-humanity. Please share this message if you are too. Thank you.